final item presentation, this thing
Okay.
she asked that we pass her out.
Let me know when you're ready. Good morning, and we'll call the meeting to order. Start with the invocation. If Supervisor Bishop will lead us in invocation and Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Angus.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. We thank you for our great country, and we ask your divine wisdom for all of our leaders here today. May we be given the wisdom and courage in the decisions that we make. We ask that you guide and direct our meetings so that it's full of productivity and respect for one another. We pray these things in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Board of Supervisors may, by motion, recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to the Arizona Revised Statutes. At this moment, I'll call for a motion action to call for an executive session to be held on April 16th, 2018 at 9 a.m. for discussion, consultation with legal counsel in accordance with the Arizona Revised Statutes.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion. There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. On to official business to come before the board. Discussion of pending or contemplated legal claims or demands. Mr. Usman.
Nothing to report to the board.
Thank you. Committee and legislative reports. We'll start to my left. Supervisor Johnson.
Nothing this morning, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Bishop.
Nothing this morning. Thank you.
Supervisor Angus.
I have just a couple of things. Last week marked the opening of Dot Foods. We had several celebrations. We had a ribbon cutting last Wednesday, where probably about 150 people attended, and a member of the Tracy family. I had gone on a private tour before that, and it was awesome. Better than, to watch this thing go up and then go in and see how they do state-of-the-art. I recommend if anybody wants to go, we can arrange to have a tour. And then this past Saturday, they were open to the public and had public tours where over 1,000 people showed up to see what was going on down there on the parkway. And so the report is that I think by the time they opened, by our agreement, they were supposed to be something like 76 employees. They are now at 110.
110.
So they are booming. They're planning to expand, and we couldn't be happier. And the other thing I want to talk about is we've spoken before about ADOT is planning a roundabout. Originally, they wanted to build 2 roundabouts on Highway 95 in the valley. Oh, this is really yours, but I was going to say, I'll let you go on the thing. I just want to talk about the hearing. I'm sorry. So we've just been working together. It's our same client. It's our same citizens in and out of that area. Very dangerous area, unfortunately. But there is going to be a hearing on April 5th at Fox Creek Middle School from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And anybody who's interested in attending that and hearing what ADOT's justifications are. They will probably be showing what their plans are. They do have a Plan B should the roundabouts, for whatever reason, they decide not to do it, but they must do something. So I recommend anyone who has an interest in that to show up. We do expect a lot of people to come. And I'll let Lois add anything to it since it's in her district and she's been very involved in it, more than me, actually. So thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Wakamoto.
In regard to the roundabouts, it's open to the public. You have public input, and they are willing to listen. The roundabout that was scheduled to be at Camp Mojave, they've taken off the board. So the fact that they are listening to the public and what you want, and they do have a Plan B, is very beneficial for you to come if you have any input. The other thing that happened last week, the week before, I'm not sure anymore, is I went to Yuma for our water issues. Representative Bowers and Senator Griffin came to listen to hear what people had to say about water leaving the Colorado River. That auditorium was packed to overflowing. There was standing room only. People were in the hall. But they left with the sense that the river water that belongs on the Colorado needs to stay on the Colorado. And this affects us because Yuma has come out in huge support of what we're doing in terms of trying to keep our river water on the river.
Thank you, Supervisor. And I'd like to reiterate what Supervisor Wakamoto just indicated, and I'm pleased to report that all 3 counties on the river are united against taking any of the allocations from the Colorado River water. We've been working diligently on that, a number of trips to Phoenix, number of trips throughout the state. I'll be going to Casa Grande again on Thursday for another meeting with CAP, along with others, and we're in the water fight of our lives, and we intend to be in it as long as it takes, for whatever it takes, until the end. So that's our promise. County Manager's report.
I have no report today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Approval of the March 5th, 2018 Board of Supervisors minutes meeting.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Questions or corrections? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Now we're on to the call of the public. Those wishing to address the board at the call of the public regarding matters not on the board agenda must fill out and submit to the clerk of the board a call of the public request to speak form. They are located in the back of the room. This must be done prior to the meeting. Action taken as a result of the public comments will be limited to responding to criticism, referral to staff, or placing a matter on a future agenda. Comments are restricted to items not on the regular agenda, with the exception of the consent agenda, and must relate to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. I have several people signed up to speak to call of the public. Arthur Kanika, please step forward.
My name is Arthur Garnica. I live at 3902 East Packard, Kingman, Arizona. And on last Thursday, I was at a board meeting, the Northern Arizona Consolidated Fire District 1. And I know it said Jean Bishop was there, but she didn't introduce herself or nothing. But I wanted to bring to you guys was Jim Bailey and Mike Collins had a quorum, and I caught them on video hours after the meeting. And Jean Bishop was there when I told him that I caught him. And I wanted for you guys to do something about it, because Vic McCarty got in trouble for not taking a class, but these guys are, doing quorums, and then it's like, where's the jurisdiction? She said that you guys have no jurisdiction over this, but Vic McCarty got in trouble, but these guys don't get in trouble. I don't understand. There's like a double standard going on here. and when I talk about this building, 2600, she says that you guys have no jurisdiction over that either. And the public, I talked to other people in the public, and they're saying you guys' jurisdiction. So I just want to let you guys know that I got video of Mike Collins and Jim Bailey and Eric Berg having a quorum at Mike Collins' business. Thank you.
Corky Cates.
I just wanted to tell you guys thank you for all your hard work and what you guys are doing and stuff like that, and just tell you keep up the hard work, and just thank you for what you guys are doing in the county and stuff like that, and just everything what you guys are doing, just keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cates.
Nice.
Mark Schabel.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board and staff. Hope you all had a great weekend. And it's Shaver. The last time I was here, I forgot to mention I'm the field technician for Mark's Appliance Service and Repair.
And your address, sir?
4054 West Hiller Drive, Meadview, Arizona. Okay, I'm here to tickle your imagination into reviewing the 93 corridor area plan ahead of the I-11 corridor that's going on out there. And I think it's time, because this is a lengthy process, that now would be a good time to generate interest in the imagination of the folks out there on those corridors as to try to create or look for creativity or opportunities that come along, not just the downside, but the upside of this project that's going to impact our area. You know, I'm a shoestring operation hanging on by a thread, and I need the numbers to grow. And pretty much that's what I have to say. I hope I could tickle your minds into thinking about reviewing this and saying, staff, hey, you know what? It's time to do this. It's time to review it, see if there's anything that we need to throw out of this or some things that we need to bring into the fold. But I can't do this without the board's collective power to do that. So I know that some of these corridors only happen within a few districts, but you guys operate as a body. So without your cooperation, it's pretty much dead in the water. And, you know, I need your help. Our community needs your help. And the last thing I would like to say is item number 53, and I hope that you would bring this up sooner ahead of schedule than wait until the end of it. It's an important thing that needs to be addressed, and especially the language. I had an opportunity to speak with your guest prior to this meeting, and I'm somewhat troubled by the language. Not just, I mean, I understand that we need to go after that, but there's the other side of it. And I hope that in the future, that side of that issue will be addressed by this board, because there's, you know, there's a lot that, it's a touchy situation, but it needs to be talked about, not just hidden. All right, thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Next time you're filling out one of these forms, if you take a little bit more time.
You got it.
Okay, next we have Heather Brassel with the Senior Corps. Would you like to step forward, or would you like for us to just wait for the proclamation? I understand that the Senior Corps would like to have a photo opportunity with their proclamation. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, we have a number of proclamations this morning. And in light of the amount of time it would take to to read all of them in their entirety, what I would like to do is introduce them, and then we could possibly vote on them as a whole. First proclamation is the National Crime Rights Victims' Rights Week, April 8th through 18, and April 14th, 2018. And this is brought to you from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. The Americans are victims of more than 200 million crimes per year. The next proclamation is the Mojave County Fair Housing Proclamation. That's concerning the Civil Rights Act of 1968, commonly known as the Federal Fair Housing Act and Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988. Our third proclamation is the National Service Recognition Day, April 3rd, 2018. Recognizing the service to others is a hallmark of American character and central to how we meet our challenges. This proclamation will have a photo shoot. The fourth proclamation, serving the underdeserved. Whereas counties play an essential role keeping Arizona's community safe and secure by preserving public health and well-being and ensuring public safety and promoting local economies and resiliency. Now it therefore be resolved that Mojave County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim that 2018 as County Government Month, executed this second day of April 2018. Thank you. That's the end of the 4 proclamations. Chair would entertain a motion to accept the proclamations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the proclamations for signature. Any further discussion? There being none, those in signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Okay, those wishing to have a photo op with the National Service Recognition Day, please come forward. And if the board will join them.
Did they figure out what's wrong? No.
See you tomorrow. Nope, you'll still have plenty of time to get there.
I hope I'm not getting a sore throat.
Okay, we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items, unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be moved from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. To my left, Supervisor Johnson.
7.
Supervisor Bishop.
I have none.
Supervisor Angus.
Nothing this morning.
Supervisor Wakamoto.
Nothing.
Holy cow. And I have nothing also. So we have 7.
Supervisor Johnson, I recommend that we approve consent agenda items number 5 through 42 minus item 7.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for consent agenda 5 through 42 with the exception of number 7 as withdrawn by Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I pulled this off because,
Well, I need to get a vote on the consent. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carried. Supervisor Johnson, item number 7.
thank you, I pulled this off for 2 reasons. One, I believe this is the biker weekend, am I correct on that? And usually we don't do these liquor licenses for any place outside of the Oatman area. And the second, even though it's not a requirement, we haven't used in the past, the nonprofit that they're using is a California nonprofit, so it's not going to benefit our residents. So those are my 2 objections.
So your motion would be then to deny that request?
That would be mine for least discussion, yes. I'd make a motion for denial.
May I have a discussion? for a
Certainly.
second? How about the sheriff? Did they recommend or deny?
It was signed off by the sheriff.
It was signed off by the sheriff.
Anyone from the Sheriff's Office wishing to speak? I see no one from the Sheriff's Office.
And one more question. So in the past, we have denied these? Okay.
We have.
Apparently, so.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for the denial of this special event liquor license. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carried. That item will be denied. On to public hearings. This starts with item number 43. I'll open the public hearing for discussion, possible action regarding the adoption of Board Resolution number 2018-040. Amendment to the Mojave County General Plan from alternative energy land use to a heavy industrial land use designation in the South Mojave Valley Area Plan. From manufacturing land use designation to heavy industrial land use designation for a portion of assessors parcel number 221-35-024 in the Fort Mojave vicinity of Joy Lane and West Ashley Road. This is in South Mojave Valley area. Commission recommended approval by unanimous vote. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 43? We have Jim Palmer wishing to speak to item number 43. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Jim Palmer. My temporary address is 505 Riverfront Drive in Bullhead City. I only asked to speak in case there were any questions that I might want to address regarding the rezoning.
This
Okay.
isn't the rezoning, is it?
This is the amendment to the general plan. Any questions for Mr. Palmer? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman Watson, I make a motion that we approve item 43.
Second the motion.
We still have the
Oh,
public hearing is
oh, I'm
open.
so sorry.
And I have one more person to speak to item number 43. Charla Kafadlis?
Good morning. I'm Charlotte Skifalides. I believe Peggy Reynolds also has a sheet up there to speak. I live at 2239 East Antelope Lane, Fort Mojave. Our property abuts what will eventually be Vanderslice, and this project is right behind us. This is housing development. You're talking about putting mineral reclamation in. There are a number of people in the area that are elderly, asthma, allergies. A project like this is going to bring up more dirt, dust. We've got quite a dust problem anyway, living out there with the winds the way they are. We have a 92-year-old that lives with us most of the year. She has heart problems, allergies, and asthma. We were on vacation when Lois came around, and so we just found out about this when we got back, and we're speaking to some of our neighbors who didn't even know about it. They're quite upset, but as a last minute, they couldn't get over here. This is a real problem, being right behind a residential area, and we would like you to consider that before accepting the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Reynolds.
Where did this come from?
Do you agree with this?
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Peggy Reynolds. I live at 2239 East Antelope Lane in Fort Mojave, Arizona. I would like for you to, I highly oppose what you want to do as far as changing this from an alternative energy zoning to heavy manufacturing. And I would like to ask you first of all, you as people, would you like to have this in your own backyard? We have a lot of new housing developments that are going in back there. This is going to be devaluating everybody's houses in that area. It's been booming, and there are, as you well know, new houses going up there all the time. Charla stated earlier the amount of senior citizens. It is a huge amount of senior citizens that live in that area. Right next to it, we do have the solar field. I feel that if we could keep this zone for something that could go towards alternative energy, not only the county, but the entire area as far as the value of the homes and what will be affected in that area, will be a lot better off by not having this be a heavy manufacturing. The noise, the dust, everything that's going to be involved. And it's kind of an oxymoron to me that you want to put a heavy manufacturing right next to a solar field also. I'm surprised that the owners of the solar field aren't up in arms because they're going to have so much crap sitting on top of those. But the main thing is the health and what it's going to be doing to the neighborhood as far as the people that live there. And yes, I wish I had had the time to go around and do a petition, because I think you would really find that the people that live in that area would really be opposed to it. And if you could table it, and we could do that, but I'm asking you, please, 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 do not do this, because you are going to have a lot of people who are really going to be upset with you. And it's just not a good thing. There's lots of desert, there's lots of other places that you could go to put this where it's not completely surrounded by housing developments and people. So I ask you again, this is directly behind our home. Would you like to have this in your backyard? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to item number 43? I don't see anyone else wishing to speak to item 43, so I'll close the public hearing for item number 43. Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept item 43.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the acceptance of item number 43. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 44, open the public hearing for the discussion, possible action for the adoption of Board Resolution 2018-041 for the rezone of a portion of the assessor's parcel number 22-1-135-024 from residential recreation 10-acre minimum lot size to MX, heavy manufacturing zone, to allow for a mineral reclamation plant in the Fort Mojave vicinity in the South Mojave Valley area. We have two people wishing to speak to item number 44. Carla. And I'm afraid to pronounce your last name, ma'am. I know you live at 2239 East Antelope. If you'll please state your name.
Charla Skifalides.
Skifalides.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
As I said before, we are very opposed to this. This is an extension of the property that you just approved that was to have been the solar. We're very opposed for all the reasons that we have previously stated. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, ma'am. Peggy Reynolds?
Peggy Reynolds, 2239 East Antelope Lane. You heard me the first time, and I will say...
Ms. Reynolds,
Yes.
I see that you're registered at the same address as Mrs. Skifalides.
Yes,
Do you live at the same residence?
yes, we do.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, on the first time, I will say, please don't pass this, and if you do, I, for one, will say, I will be selling my home and moving back to Lake Havasu, and I will not be the only one in the neighborhood who will be doing this and taking my business with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to item number 44? Mr. Palmer, I'll certainly give you another chance.
Just as a brief comment to the board and to those that are concerned, we are concerned about being good neighbors. Everything that we do within our plant is environmentally sound. We are very careful about dust control. We will be coming on access roads that are not paved, bringing in material. That material is sealed in bags. It comes to our plant, and when it leaves as a finished product, it's also sealed in those bags. If anything needs to be done because of our being there to minimize the dust, for example, if we do create dust on the streets, we plan to take care of that. We will water the streets. We'll, have all of that taken care of. There will be no sound issues with our plant. Everything that's done within it is environmentally sound, and we plan to be good neighbors, and we also plan to bring 25 new jobs to the community, full-time, well-paying jobs, and look forward to being a part of the community. Thank you.
Wait, I have some questions for you, please.
All right, Lois, here.
Could you tell us about your facility? Because I believe we need to know a little bit more about what type of, how it's going to be housed and things like this, please.
Yes, ma'am. We are intending to have a 20,000 square foot building under roof, okay, and it will be heated and cooled. We have machinery that is inside the building that is soundproofed so that none of our employees have to wear sound protection, so it certainly won't be a noise factor for the community. What we're doing is we're bringing in old mining ore that's very rich in mineral content. We bring that in very small, almost granular form when it comes to us in these sacks. They're called super sacks. They'll be brought in with basically a pickup truck pulling a trailer. And they come into the plant. We take that material, we put it into a wet slurry, we grind it up to a very, very fine powder, and that gives us our finished product. The finished product can be used for things like brick pavers, other cementitious applications, pigments, a variety of products. Once we are complete with that, we again put that material into a sealed super sack, goes back on a truck, and it leaves the facility.
Okay, and there are no chemicals involved?
There's no hazardous or toxic chemicals whatsoever. Yeah.
And the water you use, is it recycled?
Yes, it is recycled. We are looking at two options for the water. One is drilling a well, and then the person that's selling us the property, who is the developer of the residential areas around there.
I understand that.
He also says that it may be possible for us to bring water and sewer to the facility. So we're looking at both of those options. But inside the plant, all the water is recycled and reused.
Okay, so I want to reconfirm what I heard from you, that you're in a self-contained building, minimal noise. You're willing to water the roads for the use of, how many vehicles are you starting out with?
Well, the maximum that we will have at any given time would be about 12 deliveries per day.
Okay, and ventilation is taken care of?
Yes.
And you are bringing 25 new jobs to the area?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak to item 44? There being none, Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question of Mr. Walsh, if I may. The question I have, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, is, but there's a lot of talk about dirt on roads. Now, I understand when they improve the property, they wet it down and do all that. Are we allowing commercial operations to go on out there without people having to pave roads to them?
The road improvements, those will be addressed during the site plan. So this is the plan amendment, and then the rezone. And then at the time of the site plan, we would work with Public Works on recommendations that they would have regarding the improvements to the roadways.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure we were going to look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Close the public hearing for item number 44. Chair will entertain a motion for...
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this rezone with a little bit of addition, that that this property will be rezoned heavy manufacturing for the purpose of mineral reclamation plant enclosed in a building only. And also, if these conditions are not met within 2 years of this approval, and if the expiration of this period, the property has not been improved to meet the use for which it was conditionally approved, the Board of Supervisors, after notification by registered mail to the owner and applicant who is requesting the rezoning, shall schedule a public hearing to grant extension determined compliance with the schedule for the development according to Arizona Revised Statute 11, Chapter 6, 11.814.1.
We have a motion?
I have a question.
And a second. Any further discussion?
Question, not a second, unless you...
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
So with this motion, if this property were to sell in the future, would that zoning go with that? Would that MX heavy manufacturing zoning go with the sale of this property? Because then anything could be put on this site. I mean, this plan here sounds pretty non-intrusive, and I could support it, but my concern is, down the road, are we going to sell it to another manufacturing company that might not be as friendly to the neighborhood?
I believe Tim's here to answer that question.
Chairman Watson, Supervisor Bishop, that's a great question, and actually with the wording that was proposed by Supervisor Wakimoto, it would limit the zoning to that specific use. So if it were sold down the road, the future owner could use that same use, but it couldn't expand without coming before the Planning and Zoning Commission or Board of Supervisors for approval.
I have a question of him now. Are we... I don't recall us doing this in the past. I mean, it's a big decision when you change the zoning to MX or heavy industrial, but we haven't put restrictions saying you only can paint your house red, and if it has to come back to us. Are we starting to do that now? I don't recall that.
Supervisor Johnson, this is a condition that is available and that has been used in the past. As far as the frequency, I'd probably have to lean on Chris Ballard to help me with how frequently we've done that. But what this does is addresses that concern of a zone MX. It basically opens up, it allows for this mineral reclamation, but it also allows for as much as a landfill. By putting this condition, it would limit it just to this specific use. But let me ask Chris if she'll help me on the frequency.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Mr. Johnson, this is actually a condition that we used frequently in the past until probably about 4 or 5 years ago when we brought a schedule of development policy before the board. And under the guidance of that policy, we can put this condition on, or the board can put this condition on at any time. Staff can recommend this condition to the commission and to the board when there is a proposal to locate an activity in a location where that activity may not fit with the area, or the activity that's proposed would fit with the area, but perhaps something else allowed under the zone would not.
I guess the only problem I have with it is we're either going to go MX or we're not. Guy puts in his, remember how much money he's going to put into this operation, and then if he wants to sell it to, I mean, it could be a warehouse for, who knows, you know, groceries or something which everybody'd like, or something they don't like. I think we're just getting a little far afield when we put too many restrictions on it. If we're going to make it an MX, make it MX. That's my only opinion.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Any further discussion?
My only concern was the MX designation opens it up to a lot of other manufacturing, and just to make Mr. Palmer's project is great. I look forward to seeing what he can do with that area. I just didn't want to open that entire area up to something larger than this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I believe I've closed the public hearing. We have a motion and a second.
I'll second it.
Now we have a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 45, discussion possible action for the adoption of Board Resolution 2018-042 for the denial of an amendment to the South Mojave Valley Area Plan from agricultural residential land use designation to commercial manufacturing land use. This is for parcel number 228-04-346. It's in the Mojave Valley vicinities, South Mojave Valley area. Commission recommended denial by unanimous vote. I have no one signed up to speak to item number 45, although I will give that opportunity right now. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 45? There being none, I'll close the public hearing for item number 45. Chair will entertain a motion.
Oh, I move to deny the amendment to South Mojave Valley Area Plan.
We have a motion for denial of item number 45.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 46. We'll open the public hearing for the discussion possible action for the adoption of Board Resolution number 2018-043 for the denial of a rezone for assessors parcel number 228-04-316 from agricultural residential zone to commercial manufacturing open lot storage zone to allow for a commercial indoor storage facility. Commission recommended denial by unanimous vote. Anyone wishing to speak to item number 46?
Mr. Chair, if I may make just a point of clarification on the last item, the recommendation was for denial, so I just want to make sure that we're clear that we weren't denying the denial.
We're approving the denial.
Thank you.
I believe it was for the approval of the denial, which would be similar to item 46. At this point, I'll close the public hearing for item number 46.
Chair Watson, I move that we approve the denial of the rezone.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the denial of item number 46. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carried. That is the end of our public hearings, and we're on to our regular agenda. I believe we can probably make it through to the end of the agenda without making too many changes, so we'll go on with item number 47. Discussion, possible action, accept the strategy for increasing fees, including select new fees for the building division and planning and zoning division, and approve the hot job strategy for positions in the building division as proposed by the Developmental Services Department. Further refer proposed fees back to Planning and Zoning Commission, the Building Advisory Board for review and recommendation, and set a public hearing for the proposed fees for the Board of Supervisors meeting on June 18th, 2018. Mr. Walsh, I'm sure you're going to be back up on the hot seat. Any questions for Mr. Walsh?
I have a couple comments. This particular agenda item has a long storied history, which we read about, and almost a year in the making. And I want to thank you and Mr. Hendricks for working together and realizing that the original fee hike was a bit excessive, and for going through all the procedures and processes that you did to come up with this. I also want to thank the Planning and Zoning Department, and in particular, and I think she's sitting here, Kathy Hicks. Hi. And the reason I point that out is because at the last Planning and Zoning meeting, there was a discussion, probably the discussion that we should have had last year. And it talked about what we bring as a county, the value, when projects and builders and developers come to Mojave County, what do we bring as value? And when Ms. Hicks said that, it kind of put a light bulb into my head that we never really discussed that. What is our philosophy? What kind of county do we want to be? Do we want to be a county that is very difficult to work with, that the fees are excessive? You know, we talk about it being a really affordable place to live, but if it's, if it costs too much to build, it's not going to happen. So we're kind of schizophrenic when it comes to that. But I want to stay to be that affordable place where people come, where they know that it's less burdensome. We've been working on it with the agricultural exemptions and ways to make it easier for people. So I do think that these fees are much fairer. There's still a few, I think, when we go through the planning and zoning process, we'll talk about, but they're worlds better than they were. And I just wanted to take the time and thank you. It takes a lot to go back and, say, we kind of made a mistake. And that's all it was. It was just kind of a mistake, and that no one really caught. And I just wanted to make mention of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I've got questions, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Johnson.
You've adjusted the fees now. Are you breaking even on these fees, or are we subsidizing these fees?
What's being proposed, and basically what we're proposing right now is Chairman Watson, Supervisor Johnson, What's being proposed is basically a philosophy on looking at these fees, and what you're seeing is the fees basically being proposed would fall in line with the previous philosophy that the fees were structured, that they're currently structured at. So basically what you're seeing is, well, if I may, building department, what we're looking at, initially we went in and the intent through this whole process is to maintain and to improve our customer service. Initially, we looked at we need to bring in more people in order to maintain that service and to handle the amount of work increase that we're seeing. So the initial fees, what was done is they were looked at. Okay, let's look at the total cost of what it costs to do business, and then we'll charge fees for that entire cost in order to hire additional people. In this process, we've been able to go back and take a look at, and in the building division alone, we found that we've lost a number of critical employees, and in order to attract and retain qualified employees, we're asking the board to consider those specific jobs, my plan reviewers and my building inspectors, as hot jobs, and be able to provide an increase in order to attract and retain that position better. That will come at a lesser cost to the county and a lesser cost to the builders, because we're maintaining those same positions, but just improving the salaries that we can pay for those positions to be able to be more competitive with other cities. With regards to planning and zoning, we'll still be about the same 30-70 split. What we're looking at with the fees covering 30% of the cost and the county covering 70% of the cost, what the fees do is, with that increase in workload, this increase is going to help relieve the general fund of that additional cost for those increased in permits. So if you're looking at a 70-30 split with an increased workload, that 70% would grow in order to cover still just that 30%. So these increased fees will help maintain that balance of a 30-70 split.
Though we accomplished nothing, the taxpayer is still subsidizing these people.
I think
basically.
Yeah.
You had brought this to us before, I believe, on an agenda item, and it was supposed to come back in May. Why are we going to June now?
So what occurred with this was we were on schedule with the proposed outreach plan that we had submitted to the board back in December. We had a number of outreach meetings in January. We went 5 different cities or 5 different meetings and met with the folks there. We brought it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission with those comments and then some recommendations to the fees based on those comments. The Planning and Zoning Commission then asked that we refer it back to the board for their direction on philosophy and strategy on how to structure those fees. In so doing, we brought it back internally, looked at what we saw as an acceptable philosophy and strategy on revamping those fees. Internally, we put that together and then are proposing it to the board for consideration to then take back to the Planning and Zoning and Building Code Advisory Board for their comments.
So we've gone over a year's time, we've spent staff time, and we had an overwhelming abundance of people show up, 17 people total. And at our meeting when we first held it, there was only a few people here. We spent all this time because that few of people want something to keep everything the same way and have us subsidize it? I mean, well, I guess it's not a fair question. Never mind that question.
I have a question. This 30-70 split, when was it first? Because we're just carrying that on. It's been 30-70. Mm-hmm. What year was that put into place? What board of supervisors put that into place?
The planning and zoning fees have been in place, is it 9 years now? I believe so. So the last change to the planning and zoning fees would have been about 9 years ago.
Okay, so Supervisor Johnson, did you fight to have that changed those years ago?
We increased the fees at that time.
But it was only 30-70, so we were still subsidizing at 70%. So nothing's changed since then.
No, nothing's changed. We've
Okay.
been trying to increase it.
Okay. And when Ms. Hicks was saying that, how difficult it is to get things done, you know, we had that problem. And so we have to make that decision. What kind of county do we want to be? And I appreciate that you came up with these numbers, because I think they're fair.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I guess to add to that, Mr. Chairman, everything I get back, the county's easier to deal with than the cities. And only developers complain because they don't want to pay their fair shares.
Anything further?
Oh,
Supervisor
that's all.
Deb?
I probably should throw in my comments.
Supervisor Bishop?
Director Welch, I just wanted to thank you because the only thing I heard from my constituents was they thought it was very unfair with the RV fees and the kennel fees, and I see those were adjusted, and they're very well within reason. I think everybody is happy with that, and I think home occupations was another area that had some concerns, but I have to agree with Supervisor Johnson. This 30-70 split, it just doesn't seem to be the right thing to do, to make all of our taxpayers pay for somebody else's permits. So I appreciate the fact that these were lowered significantly, but I'm not sure that that they were raised to the point to where we can maybe get this split a little more fair for the rest of our constituents. I mean, it's been 30-70 for years, but maybe we can slowly, as the years progress, get that split up to maybe a 40% that compared to the 30, and then a few years later, and gradually work our way up to where the taxpayers are not subsidizing that much of someone else's permits, especially if they're commercial developers. I think they pass those fees on to their customers. But I appreciate the fact that this is helping the little person and that might be on a fixed income. So I have mixed feelings here. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Supervisor Bishop. This is for setting the public hearing for June 18th, 2018.
I make a motion that we accept item 47 as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to set the public hearing for June 18th, 2018. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carried. On to item number 48, discussion, possible action, acknowledge the receipt of and refer to Public Works a petition filed pursuant to Mojave County Ordinance 2016-09 to have included in the Mojave County Tertiary Roads Maintenance System approximately 0.36 mile section of East Blake Ranch Road from North Stephen Road to North Broken Arrow Road, located in the East Kingman area. Mr. Latowski. Question for Mr. Latowski. Good morning, Mr. Latowski.
Good morning, Chairman Watson. This item is, per our standard practice, is presenting to the Board of Supervisors an acknowledgement and referral to staff of a public petition received to accept this section of Blake Ranch Road, the remaining unmaintained section of Blake Ranch Road, for maintenance. Staff has not yet moved forward on this pending the board's consent and referral to staff.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Latowski?
I have a question. This small area of road that they're proposing to bring into our maintenance program is very, very rocky and somewhat narrow in one area where it goes through a little bit of a hill. So I'm questioning whether or not they can expand that to our acceptable width, or if provisions will be made because of the uniqueness in that one little pass. And has that been discussed yet, or I guess that'll come later?
Chairman Watson, Supervisor Bishop, generally that level of discussion will come later, but I can attest that staff has had just preliminary discussion with the petitioner as it relates to the level of improvement that will be necessary, again, just to meet the tertiary standard, which is below the county's standard engineering standards for road development. But you're correct. The road traverses what I would label can be a hilly area, rolling area, if you will. And although there's 60 feet of right-of-way laid out for the roadway, there's going to be some care that needs to be given toward this roadway being in such a manner that it can accommodate two-way traffic and subcompact vehicles is per our threshold for accepting tertiary maintenance.
Well, I certainly support it, so thank you.
Motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve.
We have a motion?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. On to item number 49. Discussion, possible action, scheduling a Board of Supervisors budget workshop for May 15th.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Discussion. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Ms. Lloyd, take that one to the bank. Item number 50, discussion, possible action, review, and request of Bullhead City for funding assistance for a water safety program to reduce waterway accidents on the Colorado River. I understand Mr. Cotter has a short DVD on item number 50. I would recommend that to be less than 5 minutes. Is that correct? Please step up to the podium.
The Colorado River. It's what brings millions.
That was fast.
Good morning, Chairman Watson and Supervisors, County Manager Hendricks. Great to be here. It's always a pleasure coming up to Kingman and seeing you all. So we have a real brief presentation this morning. Myself and Chief Brian Williamson are here to address any questions you have. Last year we had a pilot program on the Colorado River. Essentially, we're trying to prevent accidents and save lives. We've got about 1,000 jet skis that are for rent up along the river from Davis Camp through all the Bullhead City businesses and our friends across the river in Laughlin. So as you can imagine, the river gets quite busy. And so last year, as you'll see in the video, and the chief will explain some of the parameters of how this program works, essentially, again, it's to save lives. And it started this weekend. It was beautiful, 90 degrees, and we had a lot of jet skis and boats on the river already for our busy summer season. When I talked to the City Council about this here recently, expanding the program all the way from Davis Camp down to Big Bend on the Nevada side and looking at an expanded program, the cost it's pretty expensive, and so the request is that Clark County, Mojave County, and Bullhead City all partner up to pay for this expense. The program can be changed. Without funding, we'll probably do what we did last summer. It'll be about 6 lifeguards, and again, the chief can explain that in a little more detail. There's an optimal number. We'll explain that to you in a second. I think the first thing, though, showing you the video, we actually created this video just for you in Clark County because not everybody has been on the river at these various times, and you can actually see what this program did last summer. So if I could show you that, it is just a few minutes long.
The Colorado River. It's what brings millions of visitors to the Bullhead City, Laughlin area. It's the hotspot for summer area sports. The summertime and the cool waters of the Colorado River are what attract visitors to our vibrant community, full of family-friendly beaches, thriving jet ski rental businesses, and gaming nightlife. Today, tourism continues to be the primary economic activity for our area, and it is vitally important to preserve the positive impact tourism has in our communities. It's no secret that water sports on the Colorado River create a risky environment. Bullhead City boating officers say that the Colorado River is the busiest it's ever been. During the busy summer season, thousands of personal watercrafts are launched daily from Bullhead City, Mojave County, and Laughlin properties. Some of the busiest areas along the Colorado River include Rotary Park, Big Bend State Park, Bullhead City Community Park along the Laughlin Casinos, and Davis Camp Park. In 2017, the City of Bullhead City contracted with Contemporary Services Corporation, CSC, to place ocean certified lifeguards on the Colorado River. The contract was a pilot program to make our river a safer place for locals and tourists who flock to the river every summer. Lifeguards on personal watercraft assisted Bullhead City boating officers, rendered aid, assisted injured people, and made many rescues that could have easily resulted in drownings, serious accidents, or fatalities. While the river will remain a risky environment, this program proved to be successful by reducing fatalities and accidents on the river. The CSC Lifeguard Program is a cost-effective way to meet your obligation to protect the people who provide your tourism. The responsibility to keep our visitors safe falls on all of us. To ensure the continuation of safely maintaining and growing our river tourism-based economy, your financial support is required to save lives, prevent injuries, and continue to attract visitors to our area.
As you can see from the video, they're doing something a little bit different than what our police officers and what the sheriff would be doing in Lake Havasu. I mean, they're actually doing what a California certified lifeguard would do at the ocean. They're actually diving, pushing, pulling, helping, lifting, things that our sheriffs and police officers can do, but they do it in a different fashion. And so with that, if you don't mind, I'll let Chief Williamson just talk a little bit more about the specifics of the program, and then if you want to talk some more about the financial aspects of it, I'm prepared to do that.
Thank you.
Honorable Chairman, Board, thank you for the opportunity. Let me just kind of go through how we set this up. As you saw in the video, the PWCs that are out there have 2 lifeguards on each PWC with a sled on the back. The sled is designed to quickly put injured or immobile people on the back of it and quickly get them to the shore. We also had 2 lifeguards, 1 each assigned to each of our 2 patrol boats out there. The difference between having an officer and one of those lifeguards on there is the lifeguard can quickly and more safely enter the water and render aid than an officer who's wearing all of this gear who's not a trained lifeguard. Those lifeguards all have a higher level of medical background and medical training, many of which, to my understanding, are even paramedics. So they have been very useful in being out there and rendering the correct aid quickly, which we think has probably kept injuries from getting worse. It's hard to put a number on. In fact, it's impossible to put a number on what a program prevents. So we never know how many accidents would have been out there had we not had them out there. But let me give you a few numbers I don't know if you were supplied with. Over last summer, they made 2,608 public contacts. So that's them just initiating contact to either correct someone in what they're doing on the river and explain the rules of the road to them, so to speak, give them safety tips, check safety equipment, things of that nature. They made 322 assists. That means 322 times someone needed help, usually reconnecting with their PWC or getting back on the PWC. We have to remember when Toby said there's 1,000 rental jet skis, it's not a stretch to believe that most of the people riding those have never done so in the past or are not at all familiar, and they don't understand what happens with a PWC when you fall off of it. That river is still moving at 5.5 to 7.5 miles an hour, so when they come up, they're separated from that PWC, sometimes by a short distance, sometimes by a long distance, with a lot of traffic going on. Some are not proficient swimmers. Many are not proficient swimmers. So they require assistance in getting the 2 back together and getting on the PWC. They made 266 rescues. A rescue is 1 level higher than that. That's when the lifeguard's buoy, the red floating device they carry, actually touches someone. So we believe in those cases to classify it as a rescue, it means if they would not have intervened, that situation most likely would have gotten worse. And then they handled 151 minor medical issues, and 4 major medical issues. So they really have been a force multiplier for us, but also have provided different tools than what we offer out there. Their services are proactive. They're looking for people to educate. They're out there making contact, sometimes even at the launch sites, immediately noticing that a vest is too big on somebody, it doesn't fit properly. We are tied up a lot with all those vessels out there taking accidents and responding to police-type calls, and don't have nearly the proactive interactions that this group has been able to do for us. So we found the program to be very beneficial. I have a boating officer that's been a boating officer for 20 years. And he's not really easy to impress, but at the end of the summer, he said that this was really a great thing, and there's no doubt in his mind that it helped provide a safer environment for our visitors and residents on the river.
Thank you, Chief Williamson.
Chairman Watson, we stand for questions. As you know, the request was a 3-way financial split between Clark County, Mojave County, and the city. I'm open to discussions on if there's other opportunities. I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't think Davis Camp didn't have a major impact on the river. It does. You have a vendor that rents a number of jet skis. A number of the vessels rented in the city end up at Davis Camp. The city's taking full responsibility for all the jet skis and the businesses in our community. In fact, we did this pilot program for a whole summer last year just to make sure this was a worthy investment of our important dollars. And then, of course, we would make the same request of Laughlin and Clark County. Now, Laughlin last year did invest in the program by providing a subsidy to the program by providing free hotel rooms, so that saved us about $10,000. We believe the Laughlin resorts would do that again this year. And so we do believe at least the resorts will invest in providing that. That would save the program between $10,000 and $15,000 if we up the lifeguards. And then, of course, we'll be asking Clark County and making the same presentation at the Clark County Board, hopefully in April.
Mm-hmm. Questions for Mr. Cotter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you guys, does the city annex out to the middle of the river?
We do.
So that's city property out there then, huh?
It is.
I guess my suggestion would be if, because the sheriff does our boating, if it's something the sheriff believes is worthwhile, he could make arrangements out of his budget to cover that.
Chairman Watson, I have a few questions.
Supervisor Angus.
Having lived on the river, I know the problems. We've personally gone and saved some people, honestly, because they don't know the power of the river, and it is dangerous. But I'm looking at sort of the costs of it. So your pilot program cost about $138,000, and that was for 5 lifeguards, and you want to up that to 7, and it's another almost $100,000, $225,000 that you want to split up 3 ways. And I'm not really sure if that is something that I can agree to right now. I'd like to know what Clark County has to say. It seems even more than the county that they really have a say in it too. They rent jet skis. The city rents jet skis, the county rents jet skis. Have you looked into maybe putting on a fee per watercraft for this safety program?
So we haven't looked at a fee, Supervisor Angus, just knowing the complexity of where would that fee be collected, and because we have multi-states, multi-jurisdictions, your park, our vendors, our parks, it could be looked at. It's been suggested that we look at game and fish and regulating to bring safety. Other than having more security out there, it's been how do you make the river safer? Well, we've got 2 states with different rules on even who can operate jet skis and boats. So it's a very complex, complicated issue. Trying to charge just from our boat launch, though, or our boat launches, or just our vendors gets very complicated because, as you know, you have a concessionaire. Every casino in Laughlin has concessionaires, if you will. So it's very complicated to find that particular route to attach a fee to this.
I think Supervisor Johnson was correct. If it were to come out of some kind of fund, it would probably come out of the Sheriff's Department. Mr. Hendricks, where would this money come from? If we were to agree to this today, where would the natural place to take it from be?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, staff has just gotten finished meeting with the department heads and the elected officials, and I wanted to just mention that the sheriff actually was a true partner and came forward with a zero increase in requests, even though he has a tremendous amount of needs at trying to keep this entire county safe. And if we did look at participation in this type of a program, I would suggest to the board that they would ask for the support of the sheriff, but the funding for this would have to come from our contingency because everything else is allocated.
And you haven't gone, when are you going to Clark County?
We don't have a confirmation yet. We're trying to get on their next agenda as well.
Well, you know, I'm not saying that I'd be adverse to giving something. I think that that $75,000 for 2 more doesn't really kind of make sense for us right now. We're having budget problems ourselves, as you know.
Very understandable, and again, we're here with the ask and the request and understanding that we're trying to save lives, and it's the lives of your customers and ours, and we're going to do everything we can this summer on the river to make it as safe as we possibly can.
So you're going to, no matter what happens, you're going to keep the program that you have, that the city is paying for, the $137,000 for the 5 lifeguards.
We are going to do our darndest to keep that program operational. We do believe, if nothing else, we went from 2 fatalities down to 1. Right. Over 2,000 connections out there. I do think it's something that our city council and our administration definitely support. If there was an innovative way for you all to get some revenue, like you said, Supervisor Angus, at Davis Camp directly, either off your concessionaire or off the users, because there are a lot of jet skis at Davis Camp every day in the summer. And so I'm not putting blame on anybody. It's a great opportunity. We have hundreds of thousands of people who come through our community that support a lot of jobs, support a property tax base, our sales tax base. So we're all in this together. I wasn't coming to you today saying, you know, you have to do this, or it's just, there's a partnership here, and if we could continue to explore it, I'd be happy to continue exploring it, whatever that may be. And again, even if it's at a lesser amount, we're open to that. There's no right or wrong answer. That river, the right answer is we need to keep it as safe as possible, and we're going to do everything we can to do that.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cotter. I really appreciate that. And I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No, I was just saying that, I hadn't known about this, honestly, until it showed up here. And so I'd like to kind of monitor it this year and really get to know it and see really the value and maybe explore different ways that we can help out in this. But, we're going into our budget, and I just can't see it happening right now. That's just me.
Understand.
And it's my district that I love,
And it's my river, too.
That's right.
But I'd be very interested to see if you could create a dialogue with Clark County, with Laughlin. I think a small fee, maybe $1 launching fee, could go a long way. There are thousands and thousands of those things on the river every day in the summertime. It's astonishing to me that there's not more accidents. It really is. But I would certainly think that there should be some cooperation from all the communities to try to solve this problem, make the river safer. But that's the direction that I would head, and anything that I can do to help you, I'd be glad to do that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Cotter.
Thanks a lot.
Any further questions for Mr. Cotter?
That's the action here.
Okay, I think we can probably proceed now to item number 51. Would that be correct? Supervisor Angus, item 51.
Oh, okay. I just brought to the attention of the board requesting us to sign a letter of support to the Arizona State Parks Department delineating Mojave County's support of the Arizona Peace Trail State Park that we have been hearing about for well over a year, or maybe even 2 years. I can't keep track anymore. This is something that they need for their next step, so I brought it forth. And I'd like to make a motion to accept.
We have a motion to accept item 51, which would be the Arizona State Parks Department
Second.
Peace Trail, and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. On to item number 52. This item has been discussed in executive session, and now we bring it forth to the open process. This is the discussion, possible action for the approval of the acquisition for public purposes of parcel number 2252609, which is 15 acres more or less, utilizing $250,000 plus fees and other incidental expenses of the $470,000 from the sale of the property across the Beale Street. This sourced from account number 480-09-0500 and authorize the county manager to finalize the details and conduct the necessary due diligence and sign the purchase contract. This item I bring to you to assure us that we would have standing in our disagreement with the Central Arizona Project and the Groundwater Replenishment District. And this is part of the fight that we're putting together to preserve our rights to Colorado River water, fourth priority water, and I believe it's imperative that we step forth with this action to show those people from Central Arizona Project that we are not a paper tiger, but we are here to bloody some noses. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve item number 52.
I second.
I have some questions, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Certainly, Supervisor Johnson, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you. I guess, when did we approve doing the appraisal of this property?
Supervisor, I'm sorry, Mr. Hendrick?
I don't believe there was any action by the board officially to approve the appraisal. I believe the board did take action to give the authority for the lead on this particular issue to oppose the severance and repurposing of the water of MVIDD to the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, and that's where the direction came.
To be more specific, Supervisor Johnson, that was under my purveyor as chairman and the guidance of our litigation against CAP.
Okay, I guess at some point somebody has to be playing the devil's advocate in this. We spent $595,899 in 6 years on Planet Ranch. If we go forward with the land purchase, we will spend $559,082 in less than a year on this water fight. And we still have no guarantee that it's going to give us standing. We haven't gone to court yet, and we don't know. MVIDD hasn't placed it on their agenda yet. I question the buying land for how we can always make it work to say it's a public purpose, but to me, we're buying land so we can sue somebody, and I don't know if that's going to be much of a stand in court. But we have an awful lot of obligations with EORP, PERS. We're short on the court building, and now we're taking money that could go to that, which doesn't break my heart. But I mean, if we get into the fight, I know we're in it for a lot of money, and I think we really have to take a long, hard look at it as far as spending money. That's all.
Thank you for your observation, Supervisor Johnson, and they're well received.
Chairman Watson, you know, back when we doing Planet Ranch, it was brought up to us by our congressman that we had an opportunity to buy property at Planet Ranch all those years ago. I wasn't on that board. I believe you were, Supervisor Johnson, and we didn't. And because we didn't, we ended up spending almost $600,000. And every time I went to a meeting, this is what I heard. How come you didn't buy that land when you had the opportunity to do so? And if we had done that, we might not even be having this discussion today, because we would have had standing and we would have fought that fight years ago, but we're here now. And I would hate to, 10 years from now, somebody say, you had that opportunity to buy that land and you didn't. And so I think we've got to learn from our mistakes, admit we made mistakes, because by the time we got involved in that Planet Ranch, we had no standing. We really didn't. We were really fighting a losing battle because, frankly, Supervisor Johnson, you told us that, you know, we should be doing this. So I'm sort of not understanding now, going back on that. This is the water, this is the future, and it's just something, it's a bitter pill, but I think we have to swallow it.
The big difference is we're talking about surface water at Planet Ranch, and I don't believe the board ever had the opportunity to buy it, nor the inclination if they did, because it went for millions and millions of dollars to Scottsdale was the original buyer. There's no way the county, even if they wanted to buy it, could have purchased that. And now we're dealing with Colorado River water, which is a whole different federal issue, and I think that's where the problem comes in. If we had looked at a trade for land adjoining the Planet Ranch, but we looked at that for the idea of a park at some future because of just the location and the creek that came through there. We could have done something like that. We never could have afforded to buy Planet Ranch, but with the Colorado River water is a whole different deal. All these problems we're running into are problems that have been set up by the state legislature, and that's where it needs to be straightened at. The MVIDD, you know, the authorization for them, Mojave County Water Authority, which is running illegal as far as I can see. All these things to do with water come from the state legislature. And I have no problem getting involved in fights. I mean, I was there with us when we wanted to do Planet Ranch and thought it was a good thing for surface water. Now when you're getting into Colorado River water, you're dealing in federal courts, and we're a very small person. We have no standing as of now. We have a lot of people that are pushing us to fight it, but once again, at least Mr. Cotter came up here and tried to get us involved in his water issue. Nobody's backing us up on this. We're going to be the Lone Ranger in this, and if we're already at the same amount of money we had in Planet in 6 years, this will get into the millions of dollars pretty easily. I'm just saying we have a lot of debt on our table.
Supervisor Johnson, I don't disagree on a portion of your logic. But if we don't make that fight, and if we don't join the two other counties that adjoin the Colorado River, I believe that we'd be shirking our duty. We'd be walking away from a problem that will be haunting us for the rest of our lives. I can't walk away and let Maricopa, Pima, and Pinal County steal Colorado River water from Mojave County so they can grow, while we need those waters to grow ourselves, to provide water for red roofs or industry, or for that matter, recreation sometimes. But if we walk away from this fight today, we might as well walk away from the whole damn thing, and I'm not willing to do that. So without any further discussion, we have a motion and a second, I believe. Those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion is carried. On to item number 53. We have a presentation from Noah Karloff, and the principal at Global Security, and Ann Andrews. We can take this item into executive session, or we can have this in the open public. What would be your desire?
I'd rather be an open myself.
Open?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
With that, I will invite principals of Global Security and Innovative Strategies, Ann Andrews and partners. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Chairman Watson. And good morning, Supervisors. And thank you for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to discuss this very serious topic with you this morning. I was reminded, listening to your agenda, about some of my fond memories of spending summers on your lake as a youth, coming over from Orange County, California, and recreating here for many years, learning to fish and water ski. So thank you, and so nice to be back. So let's talk about an imperative here, the opportunity that York County has to engage in the fight to take back what has been taken from your county. Mojave County has been seriously impacted by the opioid crisis. This is a situation that has affected virtually every city, county, township, state, municipality, and beyond in this country. We know from your governor's report and from the statistics that have been discussed publicly and published across the country that we started here in Mojave County, and talking to Chairman Watson, Supervisor Bishop, Supervisor Wakamoto, all have given us time on their agendas to discuss with them what it is this litigation presents and the opportunity that Mojave County has to heal its community, solve the problem that it has inherited from companies, doctors, and various distributors of these drugs in your community at record numbers. Before I go into my PowerPoint presentation, and we'll be inviting questions and comments in this open session, I want it to be understood how this came to be and why litigation of this sort is going on around the country. And the fact that hundreds, if not thousands, of communities like yours will be joining in this litigation, many, many, many of them already having done so. So let's talk about the national litigation for a few minutes, and then we'll go into what's happening in Mojave County and what your needs are here and how litigation like this can support them. At the national level, a judge in faraway Cleveland, Ohio, Judge Polster, has been assigned by your federal judicial system the task of centralizing hundreds and hundreds of cases before him at this time. That has happened. The order assigning that tremendous task, probably one of the biggest jobs in the history of our judicial system, to centralize all states, cities, counties, municipalities with actions around the country from every district court into his courthouse, has happened. And the imperative for your county to get involved in the litigation is now. It has happened. And what that brings to you as supervisors in your roles here to protect this community, to be reimbursed for the damages from the past, to have careful planning and modeling of your damages for what your needs are for the future, and to hopefully educate your community so that this doesn't happen again. That is what this lawsuit is crafted and designed to bring to your community. The imperative to do it now is because it has happened. It's not a matter of if you should do it, or it's not a matter of who else is doing it. It's a matter of it is an invitation to the federal system by a judge who wants all the communities here who have been thusly affected. And I think we'll see the statistics that prove that you need to take your seat at the table. Now, before I start, my last and probably most important comment is that the purpose of this lawsuit is so that your county, when it designs what it needs to fix it, to heal it, and to prevent it, are funds that are created in exchange for those rights that you have filed for your local needs. And it is a fund that will come to you as the elected officials to decide how to spend it. You don't need to wait for the federal government to decide what you might get from some faraway discussion or settlement or program that Congress might put together. You don't need to wait for your attorney general, your governor, your state government in Phoenix to decide what you get from a state-supported system, which may be going on. It is what you get to decide as the elected officials without regard. That money comes directly to you. That's how the lawsuits are fashioned, comes into this community's coffers. So with that, you should also know that we're meeting with many of the counties, cities, and communities around Arizona who are also very interested in pursuing this course. So understanding the epidemic here in Mojave County, it's necessary to look at some national statistics. Drug overdose deaths and opioid-involved deaths continue to increase. The majority of drug overdose deaths, more than 6 out of 10, involve an opioid. People that end up on heroin and other kind of street drugs, a very large percentage, and these are CDC statistics. These aren't just any old statistics. These are government statistics that are used day in and day out to try to get your arms around the problem. Since 1999, the number of overdose deaths, including opioids and including prescription opioids and heroin, has quadrupled. From 2000 to 2015, more than 500,000 people died from drug overdoses, and 91 Americans die every day from these overdoses. In Mojave County, over 200 opioid overdoses in Mojave County in less than a year, more prescriptions than people. And I'm sorry to say, supervisors and chairman, that this is a statistic that I hear across the county where I present and engage with, and I'm in the leadership of many other of these litigations representing many clients like yourselves, that Mojave County, unfortunately, had a record number of prescriptions sold due to the tragic events that caused this. You have 127.5 opioid prescriptions for every 100 residents of your county, compared to 70 per 100 for Arizona in general. The Arizona Board of Pharmacy, 4 out of Arizona's top opioid prescribing doctors are or were in Mojave. 4 doctors accounted for 6 million pills in a year. 1 doctor wrote 20,232 prescriptions, equaling 55 prescriptions or 7,350 pills every day. Near the top of overprescribing metrics, even on a national level. And you can see from the map and the color where your county so sorely looks on the state and in relation to other counties. Opioid deaths in Arizona, 3rd hotspot of opioid deaths outside of Phoenix and Tucson. Your access to coverage for treatment and long distances may play a role here. Police departments carrying naloxone, that's the drug that's used to revive people who are in distress and dying while they're going through withdrawal or overdose, are frontline challenges, but effective rehabilitation is very far away from this city. The need for rehabilitation here is great, and I've been talking to some of you about what that might look like. The individuals seeking treatment who for opioids in the 2000s, 75% reported their first opioid was a prescription drug, and you can see here of other drugs how opioid painkillers were 40 times, people ended up on heroin were 40 times more likely to have started on opioid painkillers. I inject this slide just to give you sort of one of the more tragic downstream serious effects of this type of addiction, that there are babies being born every day addicted to heroin, and they're addicted to whatever their mother was using, whether it was opioids, ending in heroin, because this is a healthcare cost that is landing in the doorsteps of many counties and taxing your healthcare resources in a way that it's very difficult to imagine having to take care of the long-term consequences of this of a child that could be decades. So So who are the defendants? Who are the target people responsible for this, and why are we so entrenched in this litigation nationwide? Your key players that manufacture these drugs in the literally billions of doses are Purdue, Janssen, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, Teva, Cephalon, they're subsidiaries of the larger Teva giant, and EndoHealth Solutions, a smaller but very serious player that sold an awful lot of fentanyl. The distributor defendants, and these people are key. Most people don't realize that this is your level of distributors. Over 75% of all drugs are actually put in the hands of your pharmacies or whatever source at the retail level or patient level, are sourced by three giants: McKesson, Amerisource, Bergen, and Cardinal Health. So what are the needs? The need for systemic prevention and treatment options are great. I've taken your governor's report and talked about and extrapolated some of the data that he and his advisors have put together in putting together a menu of options for what communities, what he thinks the state needs, and his advisors in drafting this report. You have it before you in your handouts. But what the opportunity that's presented here is for you to each, as supervisor, to be able to decide what it is your community needs from this menu. So let's go through a few of them so you can understand how costly this can get. Health, promotion, and prevention. We have listed here communities, wellness plans, education, early intervention, community-based 12-step meetings, support groups, day programs, outpatient services, of course extremely expensive, co-occurring treatment, medication-assisted daily, weekly, monthly, psych services, family and individual group therapy, residential services. All sorts of residential services may be needed depending on the model and the type of patient that you have here in your community. Hospitalizations, obviously probably the most expensive endpoint and damage point of this. How would damages be determined? These are all questions I get, so I'm anticipating them because as I speak around the country, I know what's on your mind as the electeds and those in charge of providing the solution for this, that foster care, the increased cost to your foster care system here in a county like this can be modeled and studied by using algorithms that are accepted nationally for this type of process. Emergency call and response volume, drug screening tests, treatment for uninsured at hospital, public health departments, coroner and medical examiner costs, increased sheriff department costs. You have a very large county, and patrolling this county, taking care of the needs of its residents, particularly in the rural areas, is an extraordinary tax on your services here. Substance abuse treatment. I should also mention fire and rescue. Every time one of your fire truck goes out, there's a tremendous cost with the paramedics and fire trucks that are taking care of a call. It's an enormous cost on your equipment, and it has a value, and it is burdening those infrastructures. Increased jail costs, need we say more than the cost is well known of, housing people who have drug problems and that end up in our criminal justice system. We have a tax for those as well. Hospital costs for babies, we've talked a little bit about that. And then detox treatments in detention centers, and then court costs. And these are just some ideas for you to be thinking about of what damage items we present as attorneys in these cases that will end up each equaling a line item of cost after a damage model that our experts are able to create for you. And we have nationally renowned experts that have worked with drug czars in Washington that my firm has retained to aid the communities like yours and our other clients who are struggling with how much this is going to cost and how long it's going to take to fix. I think we've talked about the needs of Mojave County. We are dealing with now communities that actually make the drugs or import the drugs from out of the country because the addicts' needs are great and the supplies for them are known. Substance abuse treatment centers, more MAT centers, continuing care centers are needed. This is a huge cost that needs to be modeled for a long-term solution. There is no short-term solution for almost any damage endpoint of this. It's all a long-term. And the experts around the NIH and the Washington Beltway experts that we work with predict that this is a This is a problem that could take a generation or generation and a half to fix. Mojave's needs, we've talked a little bit about these, that the most immediate problem is heroin. Having to deal with that is an enormous cost, an enormous burden in so many other ways, and even a cost to the appearance and the stability of your community is affected here and can be economically modeled into a damaged structure. Relief for Mojave is not going to be one size fits all. I'll say this in each presentation several times because I want to be sure you understand this is a damage model that's created by the elected officials here using your advisors, your staff, your community, taking all the evidence into account of what is needed here, boots on the ground for your community. You're a very unique part of Arizona. I've become well familiar with the challenges that you have to overcome this and to make sure that your citizens have a claim at the seat of the table is the purpose that we invite you to and the imperative today to file a lawsuit. That is the only way to put your stake in the ground, to plant it firmly, and to say that Mojave County is taking a stand. We're going to take back what it's cost us. We're going to model what the future says we need to fix it, and a plan that it never happens again. So let's talk a little about the cost. All of your government services have been overtaxed. You've been talking about budget throughout your agenda. I've been carefully listening. The opportunity that the attorneys that are coming forward with is a no cost to the county opportunity. We bring these lawsuits on with the understanding that there's no charge to the county unless we are successful. We are advancing all the costs of the litigation, so your concerns about how this would be paid for are the attorney's responsibility. We take this on. The law firms involved in this, mine and the leadership of many, it has been doing this for years. We have fought these companies for a number of years. Many of our key leaders and on our team were creators and architects and the litigators of the tobacco settlement. This has been compared in some ways to this, but this is very different in also some ways. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Ms. Andrews?
Well, thank you for that. You sort of stepped into my wheelhouse because I've been sort of very, very personally involved in the opioid crisis now, working to bring residential treatment through the state, through STR grants. You know, I've learned about all the money. Chairman Watson and I were back in Washington a couple of weeks ago, and we heard about the billions of dollars that the federal government is going to be releasing to address this situation. And I'm hoping, just like what you said, that the money will be coming right to the, it's always the problem is how restrictive it is to get the money. It goes through a lot of different hands. But I just wanted on the record that I have been working with the state, and the state has been wonderful to work with. They understand Mojave County. We are very specific in our needs because we are an older, poorer demographic. So when the Affordable Care Health came into being, a lot of people were unable to get the procedures they needed anymore after they reached a certain age, and it was the government who told everybody that they had to go to pain management. So now the pain managements are having their fingers pointed at them, and they're doing a job that, I don't think anybody would want to see, the amount of people they have to see. And I do take exception with some of the numbers, and the state even apologized to us that some of these numbers were wrong. You know, it sounds sexy to say that there's more pills than people and 6 million, but the way it was counted and the way that they have the doctors reporting, it's bad, but it's not that bad. It's not sort of like, and for us as representatives of this county, it was very difficult to go out in the community and after those came in and say, wait, well, what's going on? What's going on? I mean, we probably all personally have situations and experiences with why we think it's wrong. You know, so we are working with our communities. I know I am with our behavioral health models and our providers. There's so many things that the government has to do to make it easier. They have to make licensing easier, and I said that in Washington. You know, you're calling it a crisis, but yet it's going to take between 2 and 3 years to open up a residential treatment center. So what kind of crisis is that? So there's so many things that have to happen that is outside money. I mean, money is always the mother's milk of everything, right? And we understand that. But I hope in conjunction with that we could work with the people on the ground and say, what do we need besides money? You know, we need help with, we have a hard time in Mojave County getting providers. You know, we have a hard time getting doctors, let alone people who have special credentialing in MAT, medically assisted treatment, which now the government makes us do. So if you don't have doctors that will give Suboxone and just the process to get licensed, I mean, there's so much more to this than just money. So I hope that going forward, if this is something that the board chooses to do, that we all work together and protect the people, the senior citizens who rely on it for quality of life. I mean, when these numbers first came out, what we read, what they said and what we heard were two different things. They were saying, we have this problem, but what my constituents were hearing was, we're going to take this away. We're going to close the pain management doctors. We're going to take away these medications. And you have a huge population that is on these medications. Again, I'm sure we all have family members. And, you know, we're all involved in it, like you said. But we've got to tread lightly on this because, like I said, it's a quality of life issue for a lot of people. Plus, Arizona is a retirement state. If I'm in Wisconsin and I'm looking for a place to retire, and I keep reading these headlines that Arizona is cracking down on pain medication, and I'm on pain medication, I'm going to say, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm not going to be made to appear the criminal, which is another thing that they do, is they criminalize the people. You know, I know personally I felt like a criminal when I've gone to try to get the medications. So there's so many things involved. I'm happy to say that I believe we will be getting our residential treatment center. Another thing that we learned in Washington is that by law, by sort of an archaic law, that these centers can only have 16 beds. And that they're, you know about that, what I'm talking about? And that they're going to work to, and I'm glad that they're going to work to overdo, because, you know, we have a lot more than 16 people at a time. We have months and months of waiting lists for our existing ones. So I'm for anything to address the situation that will help the people who want the help. You can't help everybody, but the people who want the help, we've got to be able to help them. And if this is a way that we can do it, and if the money really will come to us and not go through a zillion different hands, I maybe could support it.
May I respond? Thank you so much for those comments, Supervisor Angus. And we know that there are many, many policy implications that affect your decision-making here, some beyond the scope of a lawsuit. But what we do know is that at least half a dozen items I'm clicking off that you mentioned can be included in this litigation and are by their communities being included. The policy aspects of what you refer to are a necessary subpart or equal part, if you will, of the decision making that grows from that. Your treatment center, I've heard about budgetary thoughts about that. I invite you to the discussion with us about what our experts could suggest would be the fit and the cost of these programs for your community in perpetuity, not just on an annual basis from a budget, but what does your community need is the decision. I thank you for those comments. And I'm happy to answer any more questions.
I have a question. This is an ongoing lawsuit that is already in the process. Is that not correct?
It is correct, Supervisor Wakamoto. The lawsuits that have been started are exactly the framework we talk about. They're for individual governments. So an individual lawsuit filed by a county like yours, a city like Kingman, a community or a neighborhood or some other damaged community point has litigation on file in this federal system. So you would be joining an already existing community of lawsuits that has been there they have been active for over 2 years, but now assigned to a place where the discussions are going on now about how that lawsuit will take shape. And what you need to understand as elected officials and supervisors making this decision is that this gives you a seat at that table. Through your lawyers, you will be in the room making the decisions, having a say of what is needed for your community, but in collaboration with other communities like you. So yes, it is an ongoing lawsuit of which you will join with your specific stake in the ground that is your specific lawsuit with your county's name on it.
And the second question I have is, as you can tell, we've been talking about budget. And you said there would be no cost to the county unless we won. So what percentage of would you be charging, I guess, if we won?
Thank you for that question, Supervisor Wakamoto. So I think we have talked about this lawsuit in a very special way. Typically, lawsuits of this type with law firms of the type that take on national litigation for large corporations and these drug manufacturers, particularly Johnson & Johnson being one of the largest in the world. We do it on a contingency basis. Our typical fee in any mass tort large-scale litigation, where I've practiced in this area for 30 years, usually has a 3 in front of it. Something like a third is what most people are used to thinking of if there's an accident or an injury. But for contingency fee litigation of this sort, we made a decision as lawyers that have come together as a coalition to support communities to reduce that fee to 20%. The contract specifics, obviously, we will be met with. The discussions about how you move forward with the contract, we would like to engage you all. And obviously, the devil's in the details to be sure that the county supports the way the lawsuit is drafted, what it covers, the scope of it. In that fee agreement, we can forward the sample that we've used with other governments and be happy to engage in the specifics of it. But those are the general terms. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I adamantly oppose this. I see no reason for this. To me, this is bottom feeding. They bring up the fact of the tobacco settlement. Great deal. Okay, the tobacco settlement, vast majority of states have failed to use the funds for the intended purposes, and some use them to fill budget holes to pay off debts. While it's not illegal, under the terms of the agreement, when the settlement was signed, states made promises about how the money would be used to reduce tobacco use. In reality, less than 2 cents of every dollar, or close to $26 billion total that the states receive from tobacco settlement payments and tobacco taxes each and every year have been spent on what the money was promised to taxpayers for. And I could go on this, but we all know it. But my problem is they throw out facts, and it's just like we see the little pictures, and it's just like reefer madness all over again for those people that are old enough, you know. The opioids are the problem. The heroin, the fentanyl, those are the problems. If there is a settlement, this money's not going to help the people that are sick no more than it helped the people who had cancer from smoking tobacco. That's my problem. I don't see it helping, and I think it is really damaging the people that have, like Supervisor Angus said, that have legitimate needs for pain medication for their lives. I'll have to disagree with the lady that was speaking about the opioids. The opioid use has gone down. I mean, the prescriptions have gone down in the last 10 years. There's only about 0.7 to 8% of the people who take, of course, the studies that I have, not, you know, but that get hooked on, you know, other things, which is the same thing as, you know, Supervisor Bishop drinks Coke and the rest of us can get off of it. Supervisor Bishop has to drink it. There's always a certain percentage of people that have a bad reaction to it. And the selling point is on this is, well, we'll give the money to you. Well, that's good if you have 5 board members that all think you're going to go on and, you know, maybe put it to the good use. But boards change from time to time. The last lawsuit with tobacco was run by attorneys generals. And that was totally screwed up. And they should be out looking out for our best interests. I mean, my opinion is their attorneys are going to make money. Our attorneys are going to make money. And we're going to pay for it through the higher cost of prescription drugs. But so that's why I'll be against it. I could go on. I have a lot more stuff, but I think you got the idea.
Should I thank you for your brevity?
I'd actually like to see that. Is there a way you can have that sent to the board?
Sure. Yeah, and there was one article that a lady doctor, attorney wrote, who's back from the feds, but where she used medicine and got back, and just tells without that how it wouldn't have got there. And I've had people that have come to me Like you were saying, Supervisor Angus, who, I think the gentleman is 82, 83 years old. He takes medicine, and I can't remember what other state he's from now, but he's talking about not coming back to the Havasu area to winter because they've already cut his pain medications, I believe, in thirds here, where he can go back to his home state and get it because the state, in their wisdom, decided that they could tell the doctors how many prescription pills they could do. Plus, here is this 80-some-year-old man who's now drug tested when he goes in. Well, they're giving him the drugs, but they're making sure he takes the drugs. I don't know. I mean, and they mentioned about, like you said, about how many pills we did here. It was a prescription factory. I mean, we had them in L.A. where doctors get in and they actually would run the prescription house too, or the pharmacy, and so they'd send their people over there and stuff. They were making money, and that should be the government that checks that. Goes, well, we look at Mojave County and it seems to be they're putting out way too many pills. You go up and bust the doctors or the pharmacy. It's not. I don't want to see people suffer. And before we had the opioids that we're doing, I mean, we've always had the heroin. But before they manufactured the Oxycontin, the codeine, the Tylenol codeine, our seniors were suffering, especially cancer patients, because they had no medication to do it. That's all mine. I just don't want to see the suffering of our people.
Would it be appropriate for me to respond, Supervisor Johnson?
You can say whatever you want, but you will not change my mind. That was just for my board members.
Thank you for those candid comments, Supervisor, but I just did want to point out and something I totally agree with you about. The tobacco settlement was a failed attempt, and it was by state attorney generals to recover for the damages to communities across the country for the past medical costs of smoking. You're exactly right. Most states did not do what it was supposed to do with the money. My own state, we had a dot-com burst, a terrible budget crisis. The money was securitized and went into the general fund. My community suffered as a result of that. So what I wanted to point out to you and to the other supervisors and Chairman Watson is that this lawsuit is designed to do exactly the opposite. I think I've said it, but I'll say it again, that the funds that you decide you need will be prayed for. We call it prayer for damages in lawsuit. That's what we're seeking, is a design by your community that flows directly to this community for the programs that you need. And in response to your concerns about the elderly, we share them. This lawsuit is actually designed to protect the elderly, to be sure that the drugs that they need, no one is trying to, and there's no goal of this lawsuit or in any part of the country to make these drugs less available to the people that need them. That's quite the opposite, and that is in with your hands here with local ordinances and working with your state government to assure that your senior citizens and those with cancer and terminal end-stage cancer, which, by the way, was what these drugs were originally designed for. There's a story, a very interesting story that we don't have time for today, about how this culture got changed from 10% of the people who would use them would get addicted. That culture changed from 90%. 15 years ago, it was believed in the medical community 90% people using them in 2 to 3 weeks would be addicted. That got switched through a very interesting series of arguments and medical articles that were published by these manufacturers preying on victims. But it will not affect the senior citizens of this community. As a matter of fact, it will help them. It will assure that they have a safe supply of these drugs, and a proper and available supply, and I think that is actually a good thing for our seniors and for people who seriously need these products, that they be medically supervised with the programs of the healthcare providers you bring here with this money. And we're seeing governments all over our nation design community centers of doctors who are contracted to support the services that you need here as part of the fix. So I hope that at least shine a little light on how we see these lawsuits as who they will protect and who they will also help.
Well, not to be uncommon, Supervisor Johnson, but I find ourselves at odds again, I suppose. But you bring many good points. And I believe the point that Ms. Andrews is trying to make is this lawsuit is going to occur. Many organizations are going to be involved, state, cities, just many, by all means. if we were to sit back and let the state of Arizona, through our Attorney General, represent us, that Attorney General will say, well, gee, you're one of 15 counties and you have X number of population and you're going to get this percentage. And that's kind of the way it works. So I'm of a mind to join the litigation as a county, as Mojave County. And that would be my preference, to make sure that the money, if it is awarded, and our prayers are answered through the court, that those dollars could be spent here in Mojave County, either in Bullhead City, Lake Havasu City, Kingman, Peach Springs, Meadview, wherever it's needed. And those are my feelings, but those are my feelings and mine alone at the moment. So I'll hear from the rest of my board. Supervisor Angus?
I have something to say, but I've already talked, so if anybody else, and then I'll just...
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Joining this litigation would give us direct funds for us to spend as you design this lawsuit, for us to spend as a county the way we deem fit. And if the state gets allocations also, there's a possibility that we might get additional funding because we are part of the state. But joining your litigation would give us access to direct funds for us immediately, as it settles out. Is that correct?
That's absolutely accurate, Supervisor Wakamoto. This funding mechanism, by virtue of exchanging the rights to end a lawsuit for the dollars, will be on behalf of the County of Mojave. There will be a master settlement agreement that defines where the money goes as your financial decision makers decide, and all of that is up to you in your duties and in your elected official capacity to bring it to Mojave County for what you need. And as a matter of fact, there's no need, it's a general sum, and this money comes to you with your discretion to decide how it goes into what bucket for what purpose. So it's even a little, I think there's even a little better or positive nuance to it. So yes, without doubt, Supervisor Wakamoto, it comes to your county with your name on it and your check for your county into your bank account, not through Phoenix or Congress or a court system or a legislature, federal, state, or whatever, thousands of miles away. It will come to you.
And we are allowed to spend it any way the county sees fit.
That's correct, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Supervisor, that is correct.
Oh,
you can see where I usually address the court, but thank you, Supervisor Wakamoto, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
How long do you think this is going to go on for?
That's a great question. So there's an easy answer. We don't know exactly, but what we suspect, because this is such a fast-moving litigation, the fastest I've seen, and I've been doing this a long time in many federal state courts, this judge is moving this case. There's a trial set in his courthouse. There's a case management order that just came out announcing a trial date in the end of 2018, 2019. In another court where I represent additional communities in Orange County, California, and Los Angeles, there is a trial date set in 2019 for Orange County, California. So when lawsuits get set for trial, the discussions about what the needs are to resolve a lawsuit start. They might not. They might go to trial, but we say in our business 90% of cases resolve without the need for a full jury trial or bench trial in this case and some of the issues. But we prepare for trial. Preparing for trial presents the opportunity for resolution. And that's the way this business is set. So 2 to 3 years, we're going to be looking at serious discussions about this. With your stake in the ground being represented by my law firm, you will be there with us.
How many law firms are doing this?
There are many throughout the country. We're the only one that we know of in Arizona that has been addressing the communities like Mojave. We are assisted by a well-known, outstanding law firm in your state, Fenimore Craig, on local issues and decision-making with them. We have a team of law firms that we coalesce with in bringing this litigation. So we're large in number, we're experienced, and we're nationally recognized as being the lawyers that take on these cases against these companies year in and year out.
But every law firm will have their own trial. So like Supervisor Johnson, this can go on for years and years. How long did that tobacco thing go on for? Yeah, a long, long time. And just in closing, because you were here for a specific reason, just for the record, so this money would come. Let's just say the board would decide, let's say the money would go into public health, and then the public health, the board, the elected officials, we would decide without state intervention, federal intervention, probably still have to follow certain laws, but it would be up to us. We wouldn't have to run it by the state. You're saying we're totally autonomous when it would come to this.
I know it sounds almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
But one of the things that a lawsuit that Chairman Watson has identified and others of you that we've met with is that's the exact reason for this. That is the communities at the local level that have been so seriously infected. You have your individual damages different from your state. And I can't make policy for your state. You can't either. You can't make policy here in Mojave County for congressional fix or a federal fix. The federal system, be it criminal or civil, is going to take its own action against these wrongdoers. Our president has announced this as a crisis. Every healthcare official of national import has stated that this is moving forward on many levels. So I'll say it again, for you filing a lawsuit with all deliberate speed, in the words of one famous Supreme Court justice, is you're putting your stake in the ground that this is your lawsuit, these are your rights, and this is going to be exchanged for funds that will go directly to your community. And that is one of the key opportunities that we're bringing to communities. And that's why so many of them are joining.
I believe Mr. Hendricks has some questions.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it, and thank you for your presentation today. Just a couple clarifications. You said you had a form of agreement that we could see at least a standard form of agreement for this type of an activity. I was wondering if you could provide that to the clerk of the board so that she could distribute that to the Board of Supervisors. The other thing is this Judge Dan Polster, is he the presiding judge over
That's
this?
correct. Many officials are following the litigation. His docket is available on PACER anytime for access, or we can send you any documents you'd like to look at.
How many plaintiffs are there in this particular case? At least at this time, I'm assuming it's growing.
There's hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits, but on those lawsuits, so I would literally have to pull every lawsuit and count every city or county. For instance, there are whole states whose counties, all 58 of the state of X, have filed together on one lawsuit. So it's hard to count how many individual communities, but we're going to go well into the thousands.
Okay, and if I understood you correctly, there are multiple legal services that are representing those individual communities, correct?
Not in this area that we're aware of.
I mean,
beyond
in Ohio, that's representing the individuals to
Yes.
Judge Polster. Is that correct?
There are hundreds of law firms with specialties and representing government entities from faraway places like Florida and Maine and up to Ohio. Many firms like ours that engage in this litigation.
And there's no, and I'd assume there's no guarantee that we would prevail on our request, but we would have, like you said, a litany of things that we could select from if we decided to choose from the lawsuit. I saw your little chart with the different things. We'd say, okay, that one, and that one applies, and most of them are programs or help programs. And then we would get a dollar amount for whatever we were rewarded to spend it as we see fit. I kind of understand the process. I'm very interested in seeing the agreement. The way the board action form is written, I'd have to defer to our legal people, but I don't think any action can be taken today. But one thing that I would like to state to the board, there is no direct select process for attorneys. So I would assume if there's multiple providers, I would recommend that the board at least work with our county attorney's office if you wanted to move in this direction and determine how you would need to select this type of service, this type of attorney representation.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. And that would be my recommendation.
Chairman Watson, I have a few questions, if I may.
Certainly.
And thank you for coming. We really appreciate your time. What is the current status of the litigation? Where are we at in litigation?
At the federal level?
Yeah.
So starting in Judge Polster's court, he's holding hearings. Actually, most people know from the press, Attorney Esplin, that he started this case with a very, very lofty intention of trying to resolve it. And I was there, I watched it unfold, where he invited community leaders, attorney generals, all the litigants, key stakeholders from around the country into a marathon mediation session. And had we been representing you, we would have been there for you. And many cities and counties just like your community were there and actively engaged in the discussion. Without revealing anything confidential, that has stalled. And in order to, but some important things happened. Some data is being released. There's some very important data that all of the counties and cities need, and it is the ARCOS database. One of the key questions for any group of defendants in a lawsuit is, well, how much is, assuming I am at fault, what is my share? And what did I do, what did my client do to contribute to this? That's hidden inside databases that are government accessible only. And there's two of them. There's one monitored at the state called the PMDA, and there's one monitored at the national level called the ARCOS database. So he has made some orders that those databases are now available to certain key people, and he's keeping it very confidential, but it's going to give Judge Polster an opportunity to look at, for instance, did Purdue only exclusively supply Mojave County? Was it mostly supplied by one or two, but not three or four? So that data is in the process of being negotiated for release, and you will have, through the proper channels and confidentiality agreements, access to it. Now, what I can also say is that he has asked for a case management order for the first county. He is selecting a county from his jurisdiction. For legal technical reasons that the Supreme Court has announced, it's best for a judge sitting in this way to pick a county from his jurisdictional basis, which would be Ohio. So he's picking a county for which the drafting a case management order, and as Attorney Esplin knows, but the rest of you supervisors and chairman should know, the case management order is the map, the road map of the case, what happens when large items are clicked off preparing for a trial. So that case management order is in the midst of being drafted, but it is a very fast-moving case management order with discovery, depositions, a trial date being set, that then those dates are set, in stone. And he's moving this case quickly. So if that answers another question about how fast this is going to happen, this is a rocket docket kind of judge.
Follow-up question. What's kind of the general makeup of the defendants? You don't need to give me specifics.
I'd be happy to.
You read off a few names, but is it mostly just pharmaceutical companies, or the other defendants besides pharmaceutical companies?
Pharmaceutical companies I've mentioned. Mm-hmm. The key middle layer that our lawsuits are and each law firm, as you know, will have its own theories about how to proceed. Our theories, without revealing too much in an open session, that you might well,
I'm not asking for theories, but I mean, what are some?
The middle layer defendants are McKesson, Amerisource Healthcare, and Bergen. Cardinal Health, those are the distributors. And they were tasked with the job of controlling that supply valve. They are the people who filled the orders and actually sent them into your community in violation of DEA standards and regulations, that they were to notify DEA when there was a suspicious shipment. And I know there's argument and some pain about the numbers that have been published, but I can assure you there were suspicious shipments sent. And the definition of a suspicious shipment is something that is out of the ordinary for that provider. So you can imagine that if McKesson, I just picked McKesson, your next door neighbor in California, San Francisco Corporation, was sending 10,000 pills a week to a place in your community when formerly it hadn't existed, or previously it was only ordering 1,000 a month, that would be the type of suspicious shipment that they were obligated to notify obligated to notify DEA about, and they failed to do so. So that's how this cascading amount of drugs entered into all the communities it did, because there wasn't a stopgap at that level. So distributors are involved.
So pharmaceutical companies, distributors, any other, just in general, other defendants that are involved in this?
We will, in certain cases, for strategic reasons that we can discuss as council, selecting certain defendants that are perhaps local, but that is a very deep discussion that needs to be discussed probably after we do some investigation of who these people are and what they represent in your community.
Okay, and when I refer to the litigation, I'm referring to the one that we've been talking about in the Northern District of Ohio. That's
Correct.
what I'm referring to. So going to the plaintiffs, what's the general makeup of the plaintiffs? Is it mostly municipalities, states, or is it also a lot of individuals?
For now, it is mostly counties and municipalities. Some state attorney generals have elected, for their own policy reasons, not to participate. There is a coalition that changes day by day depending on what state attorney general is deciding to enter or leave this coalition. Some have filed, some have not. There are alliances within them. There are alliances within alliances within those discussions. So it is largely counties like yours and municipalities within them like Kingman. There are individual lawsuits. They are starting. I think that they will be the next wave of litigation. There are lawsuits currently on file for individuals. For instance, we didn't touch on the veterans. There are a number of veterans who, were taking this pain medication and have expired or are terribly addicted after having served this country. So I believe those lawsuits will start, but they will be what we call the second generation lawsuits.
Has the federal government joined in the lawsuit?
They're sitting on the sidelines for now. They talk. There is talk, but no decision. The Department of Justice they had sent a coalition. They're engaged, but nothing yet.
I mean, the brief research that I've done on this, a number of people have also filed in state courts throughout the United States. Those are still going forward, correct?
That's correct. In this court, actually, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that this judge is particularly, having worked with him before and had cases in his court, and my colleagues know him very well, he actually supports state court litigation, and without getting into, and believes that it supports his federal litigation. So, for instance, we will have a large number of cases in California on file. We will have a large number of cases that will be in the multi-district litigation for pleading and venue reasons that you know well from your training. But those decisions about where your case could be filed are something that we would love to discuss in a private confidential setting with you. I have some recommendations. I'd like to pursue them with you and your other representatives.
Well, I'm not asking for specifics here. I'm just kind of looking for generalities right now. But in many of these state courts, they're moving forward separate and distinct from the federal litigation in the Northern District of Ohio, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, that's all that I have.
I have one more question. So when you said these defendants, you talk about the distributors. So if we were to sign up, do they come and they look into our community? I mean, are you talking about doctors, specific doctors?
We have not sued any physicians in the litigation, and if there's a strategy that would work for a specific case, it's not my intent to sue a healthcare provider. That is not the goal of this. But I think you all know that there are providers, there are people who did things, perhaps criminal things in your community. But as a general rule, no, healthcare providers are not in any way being targeted. As a matter of fact, they were victims of this.
Thank you, because I think that they have been unfairly targeted and maligned.
I see your point.
And there have been some, there have been some bad players. That's the term they like to use. And I know the state, the Attorney General is going over it, but again, it goes back to treading lightly on to make sure that the people who need it still can get it. But when you say, just for my clarification, when you say distributors and there were more, so here, as far as I know, they go to drugstores. Right. I mean, there's no providers who are selling them out of their office. At least they may have 10 years ago, but that's not how it works.
That's not true. Supervisor Inges, so there are many prescribers that can sell them from their offices. And as a matter of fact, that's part of the problem of how this got out of control, is that depending on where the point of sale was and how well it was monitored, that was in fact happening. I can't comment on the specifics of your community without meeting with you and learning from your advisors and learning from some of the databases I know that you have about the costs of that your taxpayers are bearing here. But I do know that we will answer that question about how they got here, who sent them here, and how they left. But to underscore your important point, healthcare providers were victims of this. They are not being blamed, with the rare exception of opportunistic people with medical licenses that moved in not just your community. This has happened in rural communities all over the country because they were able to proceed undercover without a lot of notice. And these are large communities, large counties where the internet, Facebook, we know how they communicated with their clients, their patients, however you want to call it. And then the diversion of these drugs got out into your community because they were being sold in huge numbers to whoever sold them and hand them on. That's what we call the diversion part. Healthcare providers are not the model at all. We want to bring the support here to support them in curing your community.
How many counties and cities were involved in this, other than Arizona?
We're talking to a number of counties and cities. We've met with Glendale.
So nobody signed up yet?
The city of Phoenix, I believe, is started litigation. We're meeting with Apache County, Pima County, Maricopa.
All right, so Phoenix is the only one that's doing it so far.
Oh, and if I could just interject with one, I've been trying to follow it among other civil deputies throughout the state, trying to get input from them as to who, because other law firms have been contacting them as well. You're not the only one. There's other ones that have been doing it. And the one I've learned so far is Cochise County has adopted the recommendation to join the litigation. They have a different law firm that they've hired, but that's the only one that I've got in terms of the counties that I know of is Cochise County.
Thank you, Mr. Esplin. I believe Supervisor Bishop has a comment.
Oh, finally.
Pardon me. I was just reminded that Pima and Maricopa County are moving forward.
Okay. Thank you for finally recognizing me. And some of my questions with the long dissertation from everyone else have been answered, but there's a few that have not been answered. And Ryan Esplin just brought up one of my concerns. There are probably other legal firms that are doing this litigation, and isn't this something that should go through our procurement program? And maybe there's a firm in Arizona that's doing the same thing that your firm is doing. Because I understand you're from California, right?
Right.
So if there's a firm that's interested in representing the county, I'd like to keep the money in Arizona first. And
well put, Supervisor Bishop, and that's why our coalition includes the Fenimore Craig firm as an out-of-state lawyer. If we were to pursue litigation within your state, I would be invited and be given permission to join with Fenimore Craig's sponsorship. Okay. So they are very much involved.
Okay. Well, just personally, I believe that litigation should be used when all other avenues haven't worked or they've failed in one reason or another. And it sounds good getting all this free money, but I don't think we should jump the gun just because we're having budget challenges and this is an opportunity to get some easy money. I think if it's going to help the opiate epidemic, it's absolutely good, and I'm all for that. But I would like to see it go through procurement. I'd like our county attorney involved, and I'd like to just slow down a little bit and make sure we understand what we might be committing ourselves to.
Thank you, Supervisor.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bishop.
You're welcome.
Any other comment? I'll ask this, our legal team, what would be the best way to proceed?
Well, I really appreciate the presentation. It was actually very well done, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'd recommend that we not take a vote on making any definitive decision today because it's not agendized in that matter.
That's correct.
If you wish to refer it to the county attorney's office, we certainly can look into it and things, and we can do that, and I'd be happy to do that. But I'd recommend that we not take any votes right now.
Okay, so we can refer to the county attorney's office by not taking a vote, is that correct? Or do we take a vote to take it to you?
Well, I would do it I've been doing it already. It's not like I need the board's permission to do it. How about I'd recommend we not take any action, so that way we have some flexibility. If you wish, we could, I'd rather just take no action.
Take no action. Okay.
But if we wish, if one of the board members wishes to bring it back, then they can in the future. And at that time, they can craft it in a manner where we can take a definitive vote on that. But the county attorney's office could do their own work to determine what to do. The county manager could do his work within his powers, but obviously any decision that needed to be made would need to be brought back in front of the board. So I'd recommend that we not take any action today.
Thank you very much. Ms. Andrews, you've heard.
Thank you, Supervisor
And
Watson.
I will probably be that person bringing it back. After the attorney's office and after the management's office has perused it and looked at it, cross-examined it, shot at it, kicked it, and thrown it.
As they should, Supervisor Watson. Thank you once again for the opportunity to revisit Mojave County and to address you about this very important issue.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further business to come before the board? Meeting adjourned.
No, I haven't.